So in this video, I'll be going over the different endgame things that you can do in PALWORLD so that you at least have some sort of direction when it comes to what you want to do and possibly get a good idea of what you need to be doing so that you're setting yourself up for the future content coming to this game. I'm going to assume that a lot of you have been playing this game for a while now, so hopefully this video is able to help you find more things to do once you hit the later part of the game. The first one is something that I think is very important, but I don't see many people talk about it, let alone actually do it. And what I'm specifically talking about is collecting a bunch of skill fruits across the map. And the reason why this is important is because it's one of the best ways for making your current and as well as your future pals even more powerful. You can collect a bunch of skill fruits from special trees that are scattered across the map, and you can use it to give your pals certain abilities depending on the skill fruit that you have. You can get a bunch of skill fruits with different elements and rarities, but with that being said, you also have to keep in mind that the effectiveness or the power level of the skill fruit is not always going to be relative to its rarity. Yes, we have a bunch of purple skill fruits that are very powerful, but that doesn't mean that you can completely disregard the other skill fruits with a lower rarity. A really good example is the seed mine, which is one of the most common skill fruits in the game, but it's also one of the best. It only has a 13-second cooldown, and the damage that you can do is actually insane, especially against multiple enemies or a single huge enemy. I can make a whole separate video talking about skill fruits and which ones you should be using on your pals, but generally speaking, you would want to go for a single ability that deals a ton of damage and also has the same element as your pal. And as for the other two, you would want to go for a shorter cooldown ability so that your pal is able to attack more frequently. Now for you to actually farm this, you can use something like Paldex or any other website that is going to show you where you can find the trees that give you skill fruits. And when you're looking for the skill fruits, don't forget to pin the location on your map so that you don't have to reference the resource map every time you want to farm this. And after you collect them, it does take a while for the skill fruits to respawn, and based on my experience, it usually takes anywhere from 4 to 5 hours, more or less. So that is more of a reason for you to get on top of this so that you can save up all of the abilities that you need. Farming this is going to pay off because we have a bunch of future content that is going to require you to have powerful pals. We are going to get the pal arena, PvP, and as well as future raid bosses, so I highly recommend farming this. The next one is going to be about the legendary schematics in this game. This is also going to be very important, especially if you're looking to participate in the future content that I mentioned before. Legendary equipment is significantly better than the regular ones, so it's definitely worth farming this. With that being said, you don't necessarily have to farm every single legendary schematic, not unless you want to for some sort of collection. For my recommendations, I would say that you should go for the legendary shotgun, which you can get as a drop from Suzaku, the legendary Palmetal helmet, and then the heat and cold resistant Palmetal armor. You can also get the legendary assault rifle, but I find the shotgun to be a more powerful and more cost-effective weapon, but if you can get both, then that is absolutely fine. When you're farming bosses, make sure that you're capturing the boss instead of killing it, at least up until you're able to get the male and female version of the same boss. It actually takes a while for the open world boss to respawn, so during that downtime, what you can do is you can start breeding the same pal because you also have a chance getting the legendary schematic from butchering them. You won't have any issues when you're doing this against Blazamut, Suzaku, or any other lower level boss, but when you're fighting the legendary bosses like Necromus and Palladius, then you might have to cheese the battle a little bit. What I did was I actually made a makeshift base very close to the boss area, and then I would aggro the bosses towards my base, and I would have 20 pals helping me take down the boss. It was really fun because it was basically like a big brawl and a lot was going on, but if you don't want to build a base and go through the same process, then you can instead cheese the boss fight by freezing the enemy and shooting a rocket underneath them. If you do it correctly, they're gonna be launching upwards, and they will instantly die after they hit the ground. But regardless of how you want to farm the schematics, definitely make sure that you are trying to breed the same boss between the respawn time so that you have more chances of getting the schematic. One more thing that I think everyone should be doing is going around the map and farming the Black Marketeers. They're going to drop a ton of gold when you kill them, and if you go an extra step and actually capture them, then you will essentially double the drops because you will get gold after you capture and more gold after butchering. Capturing them is going to be more expensive because you're using Palsphere, but it can still be worth it, especially if you have no issue crafting a bunch of them. I highly recommend farming the Black Marketeers because you're going to save a lot of time by purchasing the different ingredients ingredients from the merchant instead of having a dedicated farm for that specific ingredient. This is mostly going to apply for baking cakes because you can buy all of the ingredients aside from honey. So what you can do is you can set up your honey production and then just farm a ton of gold to buy the rest of the ingredients that you need. But aside from baking, you can also buy a ton of ammunition from the merchants, so that is going to be infinitely better than having to farm sulfur, converting it to gunpowder, and then having to use up ingots just to make ammunition. It's also going to be very convenient when you can just buy the different types of medicine instead of having to gather all the materials and then having to wait for a very long time for the medicine to be crafted. And the next one is probably the most common, and it's going to be breeding for the endgame in PALWORLD. A lot of you are probably doing this now, even before watching this video, but a few things I want to touch upon are the specific types of pals that I think are worth breeding for. So in my opinion, one of the best pals to get the best passives on is actually Anubis. Having a pal like this with really high work speed is going to be very useful in general, but the best part about having a god roll Anubis is that you're basically able to free up all of the stat points that you have on work speed and use it on a different stat. A god roll Anubis is going to build any structure really fast, so there's no reason for you to have any stat points on work speed. Another pal that I think is worth getting a god roll for is none other than Shadowbeak. Shadowbeak is one of, if not the best combat pal in the game, and if you're able to breed a god roll Shadowbeak with the Shadowbeak from the tower boss fight, then you're going to get an even better version because you can transfer the Divine Disaster ability onto the non-tower boss version of Shadowbeak. Having this pal is simply going to be very useful for any of the combat related feature content that will be coming to this game. Aside from Anubis and Shadowbeak, I actually recommend you to get a low tier god roll pal. For my case, Lunaris, or should I say Hatsune Miku, is the first ever and still the only pal that I have ever maxed out. She has all of the best damage bonus passives, she has a fully maxed out essence level, all of her enhancements are capped, and she also has the best possible IV. But as for my recommendation, you only need to get the best passives for either combat, work speed, or movement speed, because having a low tier pal with all of those best installed passives is going to make it easier for you to breed the god roll pals that also need those same passives. I actually did this when I was trying to get a really good copy of Shadowbeak. All I had to do was to find a combination that works with Lunaris, then I just had to keep breeding over and over again. This process did not take very long because my Lunaris already had all of the passive traits that I needed for Shadowbeak. So I definitely recommend doing this because having a pal with all of the passive traits that you need is going to make your breeding process a lot more simple. Aside from that, you can also do a bunch of other things like completing your pal deck, building an even better base, try to beat all of the legendary tower bosses, and much more. It really depends on what you find more interesting and which is more fun to you, so just go out there and do what you think is most enjoyable. And if you can't find anything to do, then stepping away from the game is absolutely fine. There's a bunch of other sandbox games like Enshrouded and Nightingale, so it's definitely worth giving those a try. With that being said, that is pretty much everything I have for this video. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.